If mindset and the financial is not taken care of, we're in a survival mode. It's that acting out of lack. And that's why I'm saying the financial is important. It's part of it, but it's an important part of it because if we constantly struggle or stress or the financial thing, the debt and everything else, we're not thinking at our highest possible level and we're not ready to give at the highest level. Kind of like operating out of an empty cup. So you fill your cup first and then you give.
Get ready for the next iteration of you on your path to becoming wealthy. On this show, you'll get the insider's view on wealth creation, the class none of us got taught in school, with my co-host, daughter, and beginning investor, Sophia Bosch. And now, let's get started. Welcome to Becoming Wealthy. I'm your host, Michelle Bosch, my co-host,
Sophia Bosch.
And we are very excited, right, today, because we have a guest. She is a lady that immigrated from Moldova, Sophia. She came here with very little English, with not a whole lot of money. And she goes basically from that to becoming a CEO of her own company, being in corporate America as well, in a Fortune 500 company. And with that, I would like to introduce to you Larisa Olteanu, right? Am I pronouncing that correctly? If not, please correct me.
Michelle, you did great.
Okay, great. Awesome. So I know that you're the CEO of Unshakable Wealth. What do you ask what that is all about, Sophia?
Yeah, okay. Well, honestly, before we get there a little bit, I want to hear like the story. I love a good story time. So where did you come from and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so that's a great question because I often think of this myself, especially I remember one time so the company that I joined and I was working for was ExxonMobil, and they built this new brand facility where they put all their employees there, beautiful. And I was sitting looking outside at the facility and trying to put the pieces together how I got from where I was to in that moment. And I still do this to this day, thinking of all the people that I am helping with the Unshakable Wealth and the message and the lives that I'm changing. So it's been an incredible journey. Now, Moldova is a country that is considered the poorest in Europe. We are getting better at it. We're working really hard to bring the standards up to the European Union. But at the time that I was growing up, it was just after the Soviet Union has fallen apart, and it was chaos. It was people lost money, including my grandparents, because the value of the currency just went down to nothing since there's one regime coming and the other one in place. So there's a lot of transition there. So America for me was always this planet Mars that looked somewhere far, somewhere unknown, somewhere like a dream. And I remember watching the movies like the Home Alone in the 90s and all other movies that are created by the US, and thinking, even my mom would say, like, this is not true. This is only in the movies. Like, there's no lawns that are carefully manicured. There's no like going through New York and, like the mood of Christmas in New York, the decorations and the streets. It's like, no, that's not true. That's a staging that doesn't exist. It's only in the movies. So as I was growing up, I had a very interesting life as a child in terms of adversity. And then that interesting life transitioned to my mom leaving me at 16 and my brother, who was 4 at the time, by ourselves to move to a country in Europe so that she can support us because she couldn't after a divorce. And I found myself at 16 raising a 4-year-old completely on my own on a $133 budget for the month, half of which would go to his education. And I was at the university and they were offering this program to come to US for work and travel. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to planet Mars. Um,
Uh-huh.
so I borrowed the money. I went through all the process, the visa and everything else that I needed to get to come for 4 months. And I did. And my first job here, when I came, I had no knowledge of English, like hi and bye. That was the extent of my English. And I remember
You're doing
vividly.
pretty good now.
Thank you. Thank you. But I remember vividly sitting at this round table with all these students that came. So some of us were from Ukraine, some from Moldova. So it's kind of the surrounding countries. And they were supposed to determine our position based on our English. Next to me, there was a girl who was studying languages in Moldova. So by the time the term came to me to say something in English, so they would determine what position they would put me in, which was between server, busboy, or a hostess. I asked the girl, how do you say my name is Larissa and I study at the University of Moldova? So she tells me, and the turn comes around, and while the other people are going, I am repeating on like a broken record what she said in my mind. And the turn comes to me, and I'm like, my name is Larissa, and I study at the Technical University of Moldova. And I smiled. That was literally what I said. And then she goes around and says, you're going to be this, 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 this. And then she comes to me and says, you're going to be a server. Well, obviously, I didn't understand what she said. So I turn around to my friend, like, what did she say? She goes, you're going to be a server. I'm like, all right, awesome.
Wow. So your turn comes, you say,
Oh,
"Hi, I'm
yeah.
Larissa, and I studied at the Technical University in Moldova," and they say you're going to become a server then.
Exactly right. So then, because I didn't understand, I turned to my friend, acquaintance that I just met. And I'm like, what did she say? She's like, you're going to be a server. I'm like, all right, well, whatever that means, I'll get right to it. So I went through a training, and then 2 weeks later, I'm serving tables. I
Wow.
get to
And you're trying to understand. You probably memorized that menu,
I
to be able.
try, but I still messed up the whole first order. Some of the people from Ukraine that came before us, they said Americans would notice that you don't know what they're saying, so they're going to start pointing at the menu. So don't worry about it. Well, I
Wow.
kind of went by that suggestion, and I tried to make sure that whatever they were pointing on, I was making the correct transcription of it on my paper. So yeah, and after that, the program itself is work for 3 months and then save to travel for the fourth month. Well, since I borrowed the money, I returned everything that I borrowed, and then I was left between like $300 to $500. And Hurricane Ike came,
Okay.
and then we had to evacuate. So between evacuating, hotel, and all of that stuff, I was left with $20. No desire to go back. I didn't even say bye to my grandma because I'm like, I'm going to come back. I'm going only for 4 months. No desire to go back. And I'm like, what do I do? Do I stay or do I go? And it's funny because I was at the airport making this decision, and people that were from that side of the world, the students that came, they were crying because with the whole flights were just shuffled around. Some were canceled, some were delayed, and people wanted to get home. So they were stay at the kiosk and cry, please just get me a seat and get me a seat. And I'm standing or sitting actually, and I'm thinking, I have no desire of going back.
Maybe it's a sign. It's something that it has been God sent that it's preventing you from taking off, and now you find yourself with, okay, I'm staying. And tell me, how do you go from that moment at the airport then to working for the energy company? I know, do you hold an MBA with finance, concentration from University of Texas? Actually, Sophia is looking at University of Texas at Austin as well.
Amazing. It's a great
Yeah.
school.
Did you go to the Austin campus?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Macomb School of
So,
Business. Yeah.
So tell us, how do you
Mm.
get from the airport there?
So my decision was to stay, but the
Uh-huh.
most important thing that I decided is to not give up. And
Mm-hmm.
whatever it took, however much hard work it took, is to go and get whatever I put my mind to. And in case of um, the degree itself, I was raised by a mom that went through a very, well, several destructive relationships, and she didn't have a degree, so she struggled to raise us. And she constantly would tell me, you got to go to school, you got to go to school, you got to go to school. That's like the ticket to being financially independent as a woman. So when I stayed, I was like, no matter what, I'm going to school. So I called, there was a person at the airport that I met at the restaurant that I worked, and I asked him for his phone to call another person that I met at the restaurant. And it so happened that that person that I met, eventually we stayed together, and now he's my husband, and now we have two kids. But I know there's a weaved in of God kind of putting things into place in the wildest way.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, I had 20,000, I mean, $20. He was over $20,000 in debt. So we started with like all this
Right.
financial mess, if you call it.
Uh-huh.
But the goals and the desire to put the things in place and get where I wanted to were there, and the drive was there. So then I started to change my paperwork, and my goal was a student visa, and I did that. I got the student visa. I was working, well, I got into U of H, University of Houston. And then I was working, paying my way through school because I couldn't get scholarships or even loans. I was a foreign international student. So
Student.
that was out of my league. And it was a good thing because I would pay and I got out without loans. So
Yeah.
awesome, awesome thing. So then while at U of H, I was going through a career fair. It was my first career fair.
Mm.
And every employer, specifically from oil and gas, but in general, like banking, and a ton of employers were at that career fair. And I was failing miserably at that career fair. First, I was very self-conscious about my English. I still spoke very broken English.
Mm.
I was very self-conscious that I was not a local. Um, but that didn't stop me to think of a strategy of how can I get with these companies and how can I learn to polish myself in a better candidate. So the strategy for me was like, okay, this obviously nobody's paying attention to me right now. And it was because I had nothing. I didn't have extracurriculum activities that high schoolers come or whatever else, that people do here to prep themselves for college. All
Mm-hmm.
I had is like, hey, I'm working, I'm paying for school, and I have broken English. So especially with companies that are big players, they want you to have very good communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
So my decision was this.
And
I'm
you
gonna
have
go.
now, you're also competing with the fact that, or the challenge that you need a company that is willing to sponsor a working visa. I
Yeah,
know exactly how that feels.
by
Yeah.
that time, I already had the temporary green card. So,
Oh, that's
2008, by the time I got into U of H, my first career fair, so it was 3 years later. So I started the process. So we literally went to the court and signed the papers. So I started the process of getting my temporary green card, and I already had the temporary green card.
so
So it
Sophia's gonna
wasn't,
be in career fairs, I mean, soon enough. We're finalizing
Yeah.
right now. She's a junior in high school, but she'll be, she's gonna be starting to apply for
Yeah,
colleges
I'm
next year.
I'm trying to build up some
And
sort of resume that you were saying like the high schoolers, all of them came in with. I'm trying
yeah,
to.
so she's basically preparing for that, but eventually, she's going to be finding herself in career fairs. Just like we went to college fairs, there's going to be employers basically where you go and where you're going to try to land an
Yeah.
interview with them and hopefully a job. And that process, you felt quite a bit at a disadvantage. But what was the strategy that you used that got the foot in the door?
Yeah, so I felt a disadvantage. I felt anxious and I felt relatively trembling at the time. And the strategies that I used, which was the best thing, was I'm going to start to go from each company that was there. And the list would go from the companies that I don't really want to go work for. But I'm going to talk and I'm going to tell them about myself and I'm going to see what piques their interest. And then I'm going to put that aside. Then I'm going to go to the next company and I'm going to again tell them the story, weaving in what piqued their interest and see what else from the story. So I would kind of adjust the thing. So I'll bring in, so if it piqued the interest for, hey, I'm working and I'm paying 60% of everything, like the housing and everything else, and plus all my tuition, then if that piqued the interest, I'll be like, okay, this is what they like. That's what I'm going with the next employer. Now I'll bring something else from my past or whatever other things that happen in my life, and I'll see what piqued the interest. And then once I had a good collection of it, I will continue going up the ladder to the companies that I wanted to be with. And I had a baggage of things that would draw their attention. And by the time I got to the employer that I really want to get with, I had their attention every second of the time. So here's another thing that also contributed to the strategy. I played into the things that I didn't have. So instead of like at first, I thought that it was a disadvantage. It was a weakness. Like I was nervous and I felt a lot of self-consciousness about, hey, I'm not a high schooler with all these achievements. But then I was like, I am not. So what can I bring that would not compete with that pool? Because everyone now is coming with that pool of skills, but what is going to make me different?
Differentiate yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So then, so from that's why I would think through my life and lessons that I learned and kind of get to know, like, even the people that interviewed before, not interviewed, but talked to the employers before, I'm like, what did they ask you? So the students, and they'll say, well, they asked me about this and this and that. So then based on the importance, the questions that they were asking, I would think through my life and but like bring in a situation in a way that it aligns with what they're asking.
Yeah, makes complete
sense. Does that
sense.
make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
I hope
you perfected your pitch with the companies that you didn't, want to pursue a job. And by the time you got to the ones that you wanted, you had a great pitch going in, you caught their attention, you got the job, you're working in corporate America, and something must have happened because you decide to then leave corporate America and start your own business.
Yeah, so the whole decision was kind of a process in the making. So I always go back. There's several, again, doing an application at the university and doing job interviews. Really, if you sit down and think about your life, you can bring a lot of things in to see where your inflection points are. So the whole thing actually started back when I was a little, kind of 7-year-old, where my stepdad and his brother were sitting at a table and they were discussing investing decisions. And at the time, they were making good money. They had a metal company and really good money, I'd say. But they went downhill of gambling, prostitutes, and a lot of wasted money.
Wow. Yeah.
But when they were discussing that, one thing that his brother said, my stepdad brother said, was, we need to put this money into real estate because the money doesn't grow if we put it under the mattress and just keep it there. But if we put it specifically in real estate, no matter what happens in the world, people will always need a place to live. Yeah. That's a basic human need. So then fast forward, I come to US, get the job, and that idea of, hey, I want to get into real estate because it's a basic human need. Like that basic human need kind of always
Stuck
stayed
with
it, yeah, it stuck with me. And then from there, as I was investing in real estate, I became a mom. And I think, Michelle, you would relate to this, and everyone listening. The world turns upside down when you become a mom.
yeah.
And I didn't understand the how much of it does until I became a mom, because a lot of it people will tell you that things are different. But I experienced this whenever actually physically it happened. And I remember going early to work, coming very late, and as an ambitious person that is driven to accomplish things, that's how God wired me, and I know He wired me for a purpose. I would give my overly best because I'm just that's how I am. I do things this way. But that'll come at the cost of coming home late and seeing my daughter for an hour before she would go to bed, and she was very little.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, okay, is this how I want it to be? I wanted to be present in her life. And I understand that the first 7 years of a child's life are the most important ones. It sets the foundation, it sets the base.
Mm-hmm.
And if I am missing and give 1 hour, then how is this going to look
Mm-hmm.
18, 20 years from now, whenever this child is growing?
Yeah.
So that's when I really was thinking, okay, I have to think of a different route. The traditional way is not going to give me that. And of course, when you work for ExxonMobil, their employees are top of the top. There is a very, there's a performance assessment and very intense in terms of making sure that you stay on top of your things.
Yeah, there's a big stress to perform at a very high level.
And aside from doing, like, I was doing the job on my last assignment, I was doing the job of 3 people plus recruiting. So I was going to the campus and recruiting. So I was a controller, I was a project lead, I was a logistics lead, and I was a recruiter going to colleges. So it was intense.
And that
Uh,
with a young family that, I can imagine that creating quite a bit of stress and you deciding, okay, so what are you doing now? What is Unshakable Wealth about? What
So Unshakable Wealth is about teaching and helping women and men if they choose to, but it's mostly geared towards women to set a foundation that it's unshakable. And that starts with faith.
Mhm,
God is your rock. And
mhm,
then the unshakable wealth is built not only on the monetary wealth, but building the life that you love waking up to.
mhm,
And that means being wealthy as a mother for your children, like filling up your cup,
mhm.
being wealthy in your health, so you're
Yeah,
present, being wealthy in your relationship with your spouse and your family. So, although we strive a lot of times of monetary goals, which I absolutely believe it's important and should be there, and it's part of it. And if the wealth is not there, I'm sorry, like you can't buy organic food because it's 3 times more expensive
yeah,
than the regular food. So, there's certain things, especially keeping a healthy lifestyle, it costs.
yeah,
Putting a child in a very good school like UTMBA, who is very well recognized, it costs.
yeah,
And you want to give yourself the peace to act out of an abundance mindset in this world with people that surround you, with people that are impacting beyond you and your loved ones, immediate loved ones, so that you can be the best version of yourself for what God created you for everyone else around you.
mhm, mhm. I totally agree with
Me
that.
too.
Now, so are you coaching specifically then women on basically creating that foundation of feeling wealthy in all of your categories of your life, including finances, of course. And
Yeah, how does that look like?
like,
The
do you
Yeah.
work with ladies like in a form of a mastermind, or do you do personal one-on-one coaching?
So we have a couple of different ways that this is happening. One is a course for those that want to do it DIY. I call it my DIY people. They like the DIY and they want to do it themselves. So, and it's fine. And then eventually, if they want to do the group coaching, they end up in the group coaching.
Mhm.
And the when I started with one-on-ones. And then the group coaching is where everyone now can see that they're not alone in a journey. They can have answers from other people that are in the group and feel heard, seen, and celebrated. Now, in terms of the actual practicality of where do we start, I start with the mindset and the financial first. Why? Because if mindset and the financial is not taken care of, we're in a survival mode. It's that acting out of luck. And that's why I'm saying lack. And that's why I'm saying the financial is important. It's part of it, but it's an important part of it because if we constantly struggle or stressed or the financial thing, the debt and everything else, we're not thinking at our highest possible level and we're not ready to give at the highest level. Kind of like operating out of an empty cup. So you fill your cup first and then you give. And mindset is super, super important. And something that as a type A person that, like you mentioned, I have a finance degree, so I'm very much like numbers driven and all of that stuff. And I thought that the mindset is like, oh, woohoo stuff. And it's so like not that, or, like makeup
Not
things.
important, but it makes a big difference. Yeah.
It is. I've come to realize that is the most important thing when you do anything in life.
Yeah.
So I can't remember who said that, but if you believe you can do it or you believe you can do it, you're right.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I've read that quote in many places, and
Yes,
I
me
don't know who
too.
to attribute it either. But very, very, very right on. Now, if there was a young woman or a woman that is basically maybe finds herself even, facing a divorce or wanting to build their financial foundation, what are maybe one or two practical tips that you would have, of actionable things that they can implement right now that could get them started basically on their way?
So I have this rule called the 70-20, the 10-20-70 formula.
Okay.
And it's counterintuitive in the beginning because 10% you should give. And again, you're giving out of the empty cup. I understand that, but you should give. It doesn't matter if you give $5, $10, $20, whatever it is, give it. It doesn't matter if you give it to a church or you give it to a homeless person, just give 10% in some form or fashion. What the 10% does, if you're in a divorce situation or if you're struggling financially, it does two things. One is takes the focus off of your situation and puts it in perspective against where you're giving. And then two, it helps you detach from the money, putting you in control rather than the money controlling you. That's a very deep, deep mental and emotional thing that it's easy for me to verbalize it right now, but very hard to internalize it when you are in that position
When
or
you're the one
generally.
struggling. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And what about the 70%? So
So the
10%.
20%, so the 10% would go to give, no matter what, no matter how much life sucks, just give. The 20% is paying yourself first. So even if you are in a very struggling situation, try to put aside for yourself 20%. If you can't, at least 10, but 20% is the ideal amount. Now, if you're a person of faith, you would remember the story when God has ordered to save for 7 years, a fifth of everything that they were, I'm trying to think of the name. Jake. It slipped right out of my, but anyway, the character in the Bible, and I knew it, but now I guess I don't know. One of those moments when you draw a blank.
Yeah.
Shows that I'm not perfect.
Mommy brain.
Mommy brain, still there. I actually
Yeah.
I did not think that that was a real thing until somebody was like, no, it's a real thing. Mommy brain is there. But God said for 7 years, put away 1/5, which is 20%, so that you have for when times are hard. And even if times are hard, you still continue putting away 20%. What does it mean to pay yourself first? It basically means you save and invest. And that 20% can look, if you have a job right now, and if you are contributing towards your 401k, that would, like, your contribution plus your employer's match, that will be great. That's the first, paying yourself first. If you don't have a 401k, then open a Roth IRA. You can put the 20% in there. Now, the first step that you would do if you don't have the 401k and you're not contributing automatically and you're in a very, very bad position is to have at least some, like $1,000 in your emergency fund. Ideally, you would want 6 months, but at least $1,000, because we all have those moments when things happen, when, someone gets sick, a tire blows up, whatever in the emergency space comes up, you at least have that to cover and you're not going in debt. And that particular emergency fund, the mistake that I made is I was keeping it in a regular bank account, like the big banks, where they will pay me pennies a year, until I've learned that there's such a thing as high yield savings account that pays you 10x the national average on your money that you're putting there. It's exact same as a savings account. There's no difference between the regular savings accounts that you're having at the bank and the high yield savings account. So that emergency fund should sit in the high yield savings account. So with the emergency fund and your automatic contributions to investments, you got that covered. And then the 70% is basically your expenses that are divided between needs and wants. And one thing that we hear a lot is cut your coffee, have a miserable life, and just don't enjoy today. Hope that you will do it sometime in the future. I go against the grain with this because what is important is for you to choose something that you enjoy and keep that something. So for instance, if you do not have your coffee and you make your people that you work with you're kind of like unsettled in the morning or throughout the day, and people are like, oh my gosh, this person is so grumpy, please by any means have your coffee. That makes you happy, and it makes the people around you more joyful because you're in a good mood. That means it adds value to your life. Have your coffee and you'll be more productive and more joyful in making that income and going through the day. So what I encourage everyone is to look at your values. Make a list of 10 values that you have, and then put all your expenses in a spreadsheet. Like, look at your bank accounts, look at your credit cards, and put all of them in a spreadsheet with what you're spending on what every month. So look back 3 months. Now there's tools. I recommend empower.com. I love it. I also recommend fidelity.com. You can go and connect automatically all your accounts, and it will show you every month and how much you spend and all of that stuff. And then once you know where you're at, what you're spending, and what your values are, compare those two. Are you spending according to your values?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I
Need
like
to
that.
do that.
Not just the tracking of the expenses, but are you putting basically your money where where your beliefs are and where your values are? I like that very, very much. That's something that I don't think we had discussed in the past, and that we should possibly start looking at for sure. Now, we're coming towards, the end of our time together. I wanted to make sure that I asked you if somebody wanted to learn more about you and basically learn more about unshakable wealth and basically get their finances in order, have your guidance. Where can someone learn more about you and stay connected with you?
Yeah, so the first place that I would start is we have a completely free course, which
Okay.
if you go to www.unshakablewealth.com/Michelle, you will
Oh,
get yep, specifically for you, the listeners here, you'll get the link to that course and you can sign up. And for 5 days, you're going to get everything from mindset to investing and all other things to learn from. Now, the second place that I would send you to is my Wall Street Journal best-selling book, which is Destined for Wealth, Master the Art of a Prosperous Life. And that is, you can get it on Amazon, but if you want to get the wealth toolkit that comes with it and some other free stuff, then you can go to www.unshakablewealth.com/ebook, and you will
okay.
get the ebook
Awesome.
and the goodies that come with it. Yes, we give a lot of stuff to help others for a good solid start. So those are the two places that I
I
would
like that. And you
definitely
start
encourage you to.
basically, I would say basic, but at the same time, very powerfully with, with the paying yourself, with probably, having, savings and building up a little bit of capital in a high yield account, so that then you can start investing. You probably break down different kinds of investment types of accounts. I know you mentioned, 401ks and Roth IRAs. And I'm sure you have your own method, then a proprietary method to bring someone, towards achieving, the goals of truly feeling wealthy on your everyday life and feeling like, okay, I'm not just a mom. I'm enjoying the freedom of, that money also, buys
Hmm.
me the simple pleasures of a coffee, like you were saying, and that's something to, to be grateful for, and then to give to others as well, with tithing, which is pretty much what you were describing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. And it's so interesting that you're mentioning about mom. And I always encourage parents to really immerse yourself in the financial literacy. First, I do believe that financial independence should not be a necessity. I mean, a luxury, should be a necessity.
Hmm.
And immersing yourself as a parent in the world of financial literacy would set not only your kids up, like Sophia in this case, and everyone who is listening, your kids up, but generations and generations to come. Because if you think about what is the most wealth that you can give to your child, to your grandchild, it is the ability, the knowledge to take what you have in terms of monetary and legacy in general, and to not only manage it well, but to also grow it
Hmm.
for the next generation. So those are the skills that you have to first acquire. Put your mask first on an airplane so that
Hmm.
you can save your child and generations to come. And I'm so, so glad that Sophia is here because she is learning, she's observing, and it's an incredible thing because I'm sure every people that are listening right now, everyone listening is thinking, man, I wish I was in these conversations
Yeah.
at your age, right? I wish I was.
I'm doing my best, Larissa. I'm doing my best, and I hope that, she is putting it into use in the future. That's, that would be my, not just in the future, but right now also a little bit as well. She's already
Hmm.
been implementing some stuff, but yeah, it's been amazing having you, and I love the perspective of faith that you bring, the perspective of tithing that you have brought. I don't think we have talked about that
Hmm.
here. And, we've talked about philanthropy in general, but not tithing. So thank you so, so very much for spending time with us and pouring into Sophia and into our listeners. And for everyone listening, thank you so much for being with us on this episode of the Becoming Wealthy podcast, and looking forward to being with you guys on the next one. Anything else?
Make sure you give a 5-star review.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great pleasure. I truly enjoyed it, and I hope you guys got a ton of value from it.
Thank you so much. The same.